Welcome inside the voice of college football. I am your host, Austin Robbie. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. The Hogs played football Saturday. We're 1-0, 52-7 victory. We're going to be breaking it down, talking about the Alabama A&M game. Just talk about the offense, the defense, what we saw, who played well, who didn't play well. Not a lot of those. A lot of people played well this weekend. And then we're going to be talking about the upcoming football game against Arkansas State. What positions, what players I'm looking at to see to have a big game, which players need to bounce back from the Alabama A&M game, play a little bit better. We'll be talking about that game for this show today. So it's going to be Alabama A&M review, Alabama Arkansas State preview. We'll get started for today's show. But right before that,
you can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
All right, let's talk about the Alabama A&M game. 52-7. If anybody tuned in last week's show, I said 52-10 was my projection, so we were close. Defense did a little bit better than I thought I thought they would. So 52-7. Great football game. We'll start with talking about Alabama A&M. Just keep it brief. There's not a lot of positive to talk about for them. Cornelius Brown, their quarterback, he played a fine game for a FBS opponent, specifically a Power 4 conference team. But I'm going to keep it brief on Alabama A&M and talk mainly about the Hogs here. Alabama A&M scored 7 points, opening drive, and then never scored again. Started playing their backups and a lot of their depth players towards the third, fourth quarter. They weren't able to hold up. I don't think anybody expected them to. That first drive was nice for them, but outside of that, they didn't really have much to show for. We'll talk about the Hogs. Quarterback position, Taylor Green, 6 touchdown performance, 322 passing yards. Man had a phenomenal game, 41 yards on the ground as well, so over 350 plus yards of total offense. I talked about 2 players going into this week's game on who I was expecting to have a big game against Alabama A&M, and that was Taylor Green and that was C.J. Brown. And both of those guys really performed. Taylor Green was not necessarily a hot pick, it was a hot pick. Nobody saw like that was coming. Like nobody was going to think that wasn't an obvious selection. So Taylor Green did have a 300+ yard passing game and 6 touchdowns. But C.J. Brown, I mean, he had 2 of the touchdowns. So every receiver, I mean, he had 5 different players catch touchdown passes from him alone. And C.J. Brown was the only one to have multiple touchdown passes caught. So those 2 guys, like I thought, were going to have big games. And to nobody's surprise, Taylor Green was one of them. But 52 points on the board. The majority of them scored under Taylor Green's passing attack. And so, like I said, 6 touchdowns on his end, a really big game for him. Very excited to see what he had done. Other than a few missed passes, the man did play very well. So give credit to where credit is due. The running game, 200+ yards of offense on the running game. It didn't feel like that watching the game. There was no one guy either. Washington had 79 yards. We'll talk a little bit more about him too as we preview the next game. But there was really nobody that like just stood out in the run game. Everybody just played solidly. Braylon Russell was the leading carry guy, 11 carries, 41 yards. Nothing impressive there. But we really took it to the air. And that's what I kind of expected from Pittman and Petrino this week. I talked about it in last week's episode. I thought we were going to really focus on the passing offense just because of how new those players are in the receiving side of the game. And I thought Alabama A&M's defense catered towards us passing. But we had so many new receivers. We got to see a lot of them. Omega Blake, 7 catches, 121 yards. Big game for him. C.J. Brown, like I said, 2 touchdown receptions. Jalen Brown, Raylan Sharp, all caught touchdown passes. So I think that was really the emphasis going into the game. And I know Pittman talked a little bit about it in the press conference post-game. But the goal was to get a lot of those guys involved. And I think that he was able to see who really shined. And I honestly don't think there was somebody that had like a bad game. I think the starters played well. Like I said, Blake and the 2 Browns, C.J. Brown, Jalen Brown, were technically the 3 starters for the game. They were the 3 leading receivers. They all 3 had touchdowns. Raylan Sharp, one of the guys from Fresno State, had a good game. Cam Shanks wasn't overly involved in the receiving game, but he played fine. Monte Harrison had a couple big catches. So I thought the receiving game was very impressive. We got to see a lot of guys stand out, and it was really the guys who started. So we talked about it. A lot of these starters getting that opportunity to start, no matter what game it is, even if it's Alabama A&M, you have the first chance to run with it, and they all did. And I think Blake's going to be one of our better receivers. But CJ Brown was another guy, and I talked about it in last week's episode. Really believing in what he could do going into this game, so I was very excited to see how well he did. So just each week as we recap a game, I'm going to kind of give just a grade for how well I thought we performed. This game, an FCS opponent, it really doesn't matter that much. But I'm going to give the offense a grade of an A minus. I thought if an A is as good as you can do, or technically an A plus, I thought they were just a tick below that. I thought Taylor Green missed a couple open throws that he really needed to hit. I thought his management in the pocket was overall pretty well. He had a few spots where I thought he could have maneuvered a little bit differently, but overall handled pressure fairly well. And then the running game was just, I mean, 200 yards, can't hate on that, but it didn't feel like 200 yards. It was a running game that I think they just kind of got it done. And the passing game really took over, which I was honestly excited to see about. I think that's kind of what we wanted. So I can't really give them anything lower than A. I'm going to give them an A minus for the offense. But we can switch over to the defense and talk a little bit about them. And in mentioning Alabama A&M briefly, I talked about how they scored a touchdown on their first drive. This was probably the only drive where they really underperformed. And early in the game, and we score first, so it's 7-0, but they score quickly after and tie the ball game. And Pittman talked about this after, and so did Sori and Ball in their press conference. Like, they obviously were very disappointed how they played in that first drive. A lot of missed assignments, as Pittman said, and the player said, but not a great job on that first drive. And watching that live, I was just like, this is not what we want to see from the defense opening drive, especially against an FCS opponent. So I think a lot of Arkansas fans were worried after that first drive, but they really shaped up after that. I mean, those 7 points were the only 7 points we gave up. We got to see a ton on the defensive side. So the offense, they played a lot of players, and KJ Jackson got to play, and several running backs got to play, and probably 10 plus receivers played. And we ran multiple offensive line fronts. But on the defensive side, I mean, we went probably 3 sets of 11 at least on the defensive side. So on the line, we'll start with them. I thought there was some impressive play. They struggled a little bit early on. I talked about Cam Ball as one of the guys to watch for this game. I thought he played well. He didn't really stuff the stat sheet at all. I mean, no tackles for loss, no sacks, but I think he did have a fairly good game. But I was excited to see a lot of the guys on the ends, and I'll talk about a couple specifically who I thought had a good game. Quincy Rhodes Jr., he had a sack in this game. That was big. Philip Lee had a tackle for loss. That's big. Um, Several different guys got in on some tackles. I think Reginald Vaughn, who's one of the 4-star recruits we had a tackle for loss. He was probably on the third set of players that came in. But on the defensive line, I like Philip Lee. I think Philip Lee is going to be good. Justice Boone, I think, was good against the run. Quincy Rhodes Jr. It was nice to see him get a sack. Just watching him on the field live, man, he's somebody that he's not as talented by any means as Landon Jackson, but he just looks like him physically. I mean, he's a huge player, 6'6", 275. So if we can just get some of that production that Landon gave us last year, I think he'll be really helpful for this defense. And then behind Ball, that rotation, I think it's going to be really pivotal. Blackstock went in there. Danny Saley from BYU 2 years ago. Kevin Otis, several different guys came in there. Having depth at that interior defensive line is going to be really critical until David Oke comes back. So I thought the defensive line unit played well. They got better throughout the game, like many of these units did. The linebacker room, not much to talk about. Sori, Dix, they both played fine. I thought they were good. And then on the defensive back room, this is where I was really paying attention the most. And I thought they struggled on that first drive. They kind of just played very much protect defense. Nothing. They were being very reactive and not proactive. They were just letting passes just be caught and with really no defensive pressure on the back end. So that was a little frustrating to start the game, but I thought they really settled in there. I thought Walker and Neal kind of struggled early, but they really started to play well. A couple guys that I thought were really big in the starting unit. I thought Larry Worth played well, great tackler. Jordan Young was another guy, the transfer in from Cincinnati. And some of the second and third units, a guy Shakur Smalls, who was not even, I believe, a Division One transfer, who had a great game in the nickel primarily. Caleb Wooden. If you watched the last episode, I talked about Kenai Walker, the corner from Oklahoma, playing on the outside, and I thought him getting the start over Jaheim Singletary was a big deal. It really said a lot. I thought he was going to have a big game, and I think Walker played fine. Nothing, I think, of note. which could be both good and bad. But Caleb Wooden, I think, was the guy I really should put on that list. That power forward transfer from Auburn, played safety primarily. I think he can play the nickel as well. He can kind of play all over, and they used him like that a little bit. But he had a phenomenal game. I thought he played really well. I think he had a pass deflection. Just watching him, not a stat sheet stuffer either, but just had a half tackle for loss as well. Looking at it, so but he had a big game. A couple other guys as well played well. Kayshawn Devila, the JUCO college Devila. And then there was a couple other guys as well. I believe Miguel Mitchell in the starting unit also had a good game. But defensive back unit, just like the other two units that I mentioned, I think they just got better throughout the game. So if I'm giving it a grade, it's worse in the offense. I think that I told you I thought they would score 10. So if 10 was the goal, or 10 wasn't the goal, 0 is the goal. But if 10 was what I kind of thought they were going to do, I'll give that a C. If you give up 10, I think that's a C. So I think they did a little bit better. I'm going to give the defensive grade a B minus. They played better throughout the game, which is expected as Alabama A&M relieved some of their starters. But I really did think the unit, even against their starters, started to get better throughout the game. And that's all you can really ask for. That first drive, both for Taylor on the offensive side and on our defensive side. They had nerves. They struggled. They missed plays that they know they should have made. It's football. Like I think Sori said it, it doesn't matter who you're playing. It's week one of football. Like it doesn't matter if it's Alabama A&M. It doesn't matter if it's Texas A&M. You're gonna be nervous. And so that first drive we got out of the way. We got 7 points on the offensive side, and we gave up 7 points on the defensive side, and that's frustrating. But to watch them really bounce back and not give up any points, I think that's got to deserve a B minus. You could honestly make an argument that it should be even higher than this, but I think because they were so frustrated with giving up 7 points, and I think as a fan early in that game, them giving up 7 points was frustrating. Usually you want those 7 points if they're going to score it all in the end of the game when you know we just don't care as much. But to have it on the opening drive, it was tough. But I think they bounced back, and that's why they get a B minus. So that's the thoughts on the Arkansas Alabama A&M game. I'm happy it's behind us. We're 1-0 against the Bulldogs. So great start to the season. And I think we're kind of getting eased in that third week when we play Ole Miss. That's going to be the real big week. But let's look ahead to this week. We're going to be playing Arkansas State, and we're going to get into that. But real quick, I've got one thing for you.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
All right. Now let's talk about the Arkansas State football game that we're playing this weekend. The game's going to be played in Little Rock. So not necessarily technically a home game, but not in favor of Arkansas. But let's start with the offensive side of the football for Arkansas State, starting with the opponent. There's really, to me, looking at it and doing some research on Arkansas State and just knowing college football a little bit over the last couple of years, it's really 3 guys to know. And I'll even backtrack real quick. Butch Jones is the head coach for Arkansas State. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him. He's a guy that coached at Tennessee as a head coach, so he's obviously got some notoriety. But he had a really good season last year. They were 8-5. Just a stat to know, they went 7-0 in one-score games. So just as maybe a predictor of college football, in my head, I was like, that's going to regress. Credit Phil Steele on that stat. But yeah, 8-5 last year. They had a good season. But to get into what I was saying, it's really a 3-headed monster to me on offense. It's quarterback Jalen Rayner, which I'm sure some college football fans are familiar with. Jaquez Cross, who's their running back from last year, and then Corey Rucker, who's their wide receiver and was a 1,000-yard wide receiver for them last year. So Those three guys are going to really lead this offense, and it's a fairly potent offense. It's an offense that scored 25, 26 a game really last year and returns a decent amount of players. Those three specifically were starters on their team last year. But those three guys are going to really lead their attack. This is a team last week, 42-24 against SEMO, so they also started off with an FCS opponent. I've got some stats here for you. Jalen Rayner, 345 passing yards, 3 touchdowns in his opening game, over 80% completion. Jaquez Cross, leading rusher, and second leading rusher, actually, it was him and Kenyon Clay, a transfer in for them. Jaquez Cross, 36 yards rushing, but he also was a big time receiver for them. 33 catches. He had a touchdown rushing and receiving. And then Corey Rucker, he had only 2 catches, but he did have 59 yards and a touchdown. So those three guys are going to be who I would say to focus on if you're watching as a fan. Those three dudes really are the other players. Jalen Rayner was a phenomenal football player for them last year, a very athletic quarterback, can make plays with his legs. He's a very good scrambler as well. He's not necessarily going to have a ton of design runs. Only 4 carries last week against Southeastern Missouri State. He really is a very good passer. He's just a lighter player and can really move. Is very shifty. So not honestly too much different than the guy we played this week. He's just a lot more talented. So those three guys look for as a on the our defensive side of the football for Arkansas State offensively. Just watch us match up against those three guys, and our goal is going to be really limit those 3 players. Defensive side for Arkansas State, not as much positivity. This is a defense that gave up 32 points per game last year, and they don't have a lot of returning players, which for a 32 points per game defense may be a good thing. But 2 guys to know: Brian Whitehead, Avante Dickerson. So Whitehead's a defensive end, was a good player last year. I believe he had 10 plus tackles for loss. So I think he's already gotten a tackle for a loss and a sack to start this season. He's a guy number 4, I believe, on the defense. So watch out for him when we're on the offensive side of the football. And then Avante Dickerson, number 9, a defensive back for them. One of the better players. These are 2 guys. I said they only had a few returning starters. These are 2 of the guys that are returning starters. So those 2 guys are going to be really important for them. So watch for number 4, number 9. Usually the single digit players are the better defenders. Not always, but sometimes the case. So those 2 guys I'm really excited to watch and see how they play against us defensively. But this is the Razorbacks show, so we're going to talk about primarily the Arkansas Razorbacks. And let's talk about them on offense. I kind of went through the stats and how well we played against Alabama A&M. It was very good. But let's talk about what I think is going to be the strengths and the weaknesses for us on the offensive side and the defensive side of the football. And just like I did last week, which seemed to do very well, at least offensively. I know Taylor Green is really not, that hard of a pick to make, but I'll give you 2 guys that I think you should really watch out for. Most of the time, these are not going to be niche players. I'm not trying to get into the second stringers. The guy that had 1 catch, but it was a really good catch, so you had to, it's better than you thought. No, this is just I'm going to keep it very simple and just tell you 2 guys you just got to watch for. But let's talk about the offense. I think we're going to kind of switch gears. I think we're going to pass football a lot, but I think we're going to switch gears and really focus on the run. This is a team, they played SEMO last week, Arkansas State, and it's hard to tell how good against an FCS opponent, like what's going to translate from that team and how well they did in terms of what we're going to do and what we're really going to focus on. This is not a team that ran the ball a ton against Arkansas State last week. But I do think we're going to prioritize it, and it's not just because we're playing Arkansas State. I think it could really be against any opponent. I think we just highlighted the offensive passing game last week, and I think we'll do it on the other side with the run game. And I think that's going to start with Russell, and I think that's going to start with Mike Washington Jr. And I think those 2 players are going to be really key for us. We're going to really try to emphasize them. And that's just to get them started and feeling really great going into this Ole Miss game in week 3. And I don't want this to be a look-ahead game. I don't think anybody's going to treat it like it is. But the Ole Miss game, it really is looming next week, and we want to be prepared for that. And I think to best prepare for that and still keep the opponent ahead of us, like, very real and understand that they are the team that we're playing this week, I think we're going to very much prioritize the run game. And I think that could be a lot of play action pass where we're running the football and then we're using play action pass off of it. Could be a lot of RPO. I'm not necessarily sure how we're going to implement it, but I do think I will just say this. How many ever carries we had, and I'm going to try to pull it up while I'm talking to y'all. How many ever carries we had last week? I bet you we have more this week. So we had 38 carries last week and 36 passes. Of those 38 carries, 9 of them were Taylor Green, and 2 of them were KJ Jackson. So 11. So 27 of them were running backs. We will have more carries next week, this upcoming week against Arkansas State than we did this past week. And I think we can have as many yards, if not more, on it. I think if we emphasize the running game, I think we can really be good at it this week. Like, honestly, as simple as put. And I look to Mike Washington Jr. as one of those guys to really emphasize because he had a very efficient game, 8.8 yards per attempt. Braylon Russell only 3.7. Russell looks a little slower than I anticipated him to be, but he is also a big player. And he's a guy that 5 yards against Alabama A&M doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look fun. Mike Washington's hitting the bigger plays. Those 5, 6 yards against an LSU, against Texas A&M, those mean a lot more. So Russell, it's just in a game where you know you're going to blow the opponent out. Russell's not the sexy pick. He's not the guy that's going to have a really big game. He's a guy that he's going to have his biggest games, honestly, in the biggest moments. So I'm excited to see him play this week as well. Russell, Washington, look for both of those guys. Those aren't quite my picks for the guys to actually watch for, but those two in the running game are going to be big. And then the receiving room, I anticipate Pittman's still going to rotate a ton. Like I think he's still going to want to see. I think he's very confident in Omega Blake, and I think he's very confident in C.J. Brown, and he should be in Jaylen Brown as well. But I think he's going to rotate Jaylen Brown and even C.J. Brown a lot this game. I think we're going to see a lot of Raylan Sharp, a lot of Monte Harrison. We're going to need these guys late into the season. So to see them and just to get them to play a lot of reps against teams, I wouldn't say that you can afford to play them against because these are still quality opponents, but in spots where you expect to have bigger leads than you will and later in the season when you may not have a lead at all. So get them in when you can, and I think he's going to do that. But I think we're going to have a little more of a balanced attack, and you can argue that we did this week, throwing it and running it pretty equally. But yardage wise, they weren't anywhere near the same 200 versus 350. So, and 7 touchdowns versus 0 rushing touchdowns. So I see those balancing out. And so officially my 2 guys to watch for going into this week on the offensive side of the football is quarterback Taylor Green again and running back Mike Washington Jr. So no surprise, the starting quarterback and the starting running back. But I really do think they're going to have big games. And I think these 2 players specifically, which obviously with the passing game, only one guy can throw the football. So, of course, I'm going to take Taylor Green on that. But Mike Washington Jr., I think he may not even get the bulk of the carries. I mean, he didn't in this week. Braylon Russell had 11 and Mike Washington Jr. had 9. But I do see him having a very productive game. I think he's just faster. I think he's more elusive. I think he hits the hole quicker. So I'm excited to see him up against this Arkansas State defense. Let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk a little bit about how well we played, but who to really look for this upcoming week and where we can really shine for against them. This is a team in Arkansas State that's going to pass the football more than they do run. They had 35 attempts last week. They had 32 passes. So honestly, a similar breakdown as we did. For them, though, Jalen Raynor had 4 of those, 31. Their 2 primary backs had 23 rushes. So they kind of run a balance of attack, but 147 rushing yards, 345 passing yards. So that shows you kind of like us, they're going to operate similar to us. Their quarterback is their strength. Their quarterback is the way they score the most points on the offense, and it's who they ultimately rely on. So I think to say all that, defensively, it's going to be the pass rush and it's going to be the secondary. And at least for me, in the way I view the game, it kind of always is those. And that's not to belittle the linebackers because one of the guys that I'm going to talk about as a player to watch for is a linebacker, and the other guys primary. I mean, pretty much a linebacker too. So I do value the linebacker position, but I think where I guess on the defensive side and in the D line and in the secondary room, those 2 rooms for us are the least like tied down. We don't know who those players are going to be fully long term. We know that in the linebacker room, to be honest with you, and Sorey and Dix. But in the defensive line room and the defensive back room, we're still going to be rotating so many guys, and that's going to be kind of how it is all year anyway. I mean, those rooms, especially on the edge and especially in the nickels and on the outside corners. Like you want rotation for those guys. You don't want those guys playing necessarily every single snap unless you really, really, really rely on them and you know you can trust them on every snap. But I'm excited to see those guys, and I think they're going to be the spot where if you're going to view this defensive game next week as a success, it's going to be because those guys played so well. So I looked at the depth chart earlier. I guess they've already announced it for this upcoming week, and we talked about the depth chart going into the A&M game. I showed you guys it, and we kind of broke it down position by position group. I'm not showing it this week, and the reason why is because it's pretty much the exact same. But I noticed on the defensive side, a lot of oars and a lot of names. I mean, if you look through the box score, and box score is not everything defensively, especially, but you saw a lot of names, and that's because we played a lot of guys. And I think on the defensive line, that means a lot of. I think Philip Lee, a guy who really gets after the passer. I think Boone and Collins, they're fine after the passer, but I think they're going to be really pivotal in the run game. But Rhodes and Lee, really watch for them. I think to get the opportunity to get sacks and to get after Jalen Raynor, those two guys are going to be really pivotal. And then in the defensive back room, pass deflections, interceptions. We didn't believe have any interceptions. Yeah, no, we didn't have any picks. We had a couple close calls though. Caleb Wooden, I was really high on him. You've heard me talk about him now. Jordan Young, those two guys play primarily nickel safety. Uh, on the outside, can I Walker, Julian Neal. Got it mixed up, and then Jaheim Singletary. There's so many guys that I'm excited to see, and as we play more important games, Pittman's going to really show his cards. I mean, he's going to really show who he really values, and that's going to be who he puts out on the field. Right now, he's running a lot of different guys. He can say this guy's the starter, but when push comes to shove, is he going to be the one that's in the fourth quarter of a real game that matters? And that's probably the part as we play two games that, to be frank, are probably going to be our two easiest games of the season. Even if you think Arkansas State's a good football team, like these two games are our easiest games of the season. We've already played one of them, and we're about to play the second one. These are the games Pittman has. Like, who are you going to play? Who's going to be playing in an FCC game in the fourth quarter? These are your 2 weeks to find out. And I really hope this week we get to find out. I hope this is not a tight game. And you'll see my prediction. I don't think it will be, but it very much could be. I mean, this was a team 8-5, and we were barely bowl eligible last year. So record wise, they're better than us. Obviously, they play in the Sun Belt, so it's a completely different level of competition. But this is a game that definitely is. If you were an Arkansas State fan, you believe you could keep close, and it to not be in Fayetteville is probably helpful for them more than it is for us. But I do think on the defensive side of the ball, to round it all out, like I think the secondary and the edge rushers. Like if you're watching this game as a fan, watch this edge rushers, watch Philip Lee, watch Quincy Rhodes Jr., and then the secondary, watch all of those guys. I mean, you can't do it every single play, but watching some of those outside corners, seeing how well they play. Corey Rucker, whoever's on Rucker, I don't know who. I mean, that'll help just to see who's that corner. Jaheim Singletary, I thought was going to be that guy, and he wasn't even listed as a starter going into this year. So who's going to be guarding Rucker? That's a big deal. Rucker also I'm gonna have it number 7. So Corey Rucker, watch for him. Number 7. Who's guarding number 7? I'll be interested to see that matchup. But I've got my two guys. Talked a lot there. Xavier Sorey Jr., safety, Larry Worth III. So those are my two guys, linebacker Xavier Sorey, safety Larry Worth III. Those guys both played well this week. They're probably going to be our two leading tacklers if I had to bet. Maybe Steven Dix Jr. is in on there. But these are two good players in coverage. These are two good sound tacklers. And you really can value that in college football is two guys that you can trust to tackle. And these two guys are those dudes for us. So I'm excited to see how well they do. Also in coverage, what can they do? Any tackles for loss, I'm sure these guys will blitz a little bit throughout the game as well. So I'm excited to see how they play. But we've talked about the offense and we've talked about the defense and those hogs kind of to watch. So now it's time to give you my official score prediction. Now, Saturday, 4 o'clock in Little Rock, Arkansas State, they're 1-0. Arkansas, we're 1-0. My ultimate prediction is Arkansas 38-17. So I'll tell you why. That's for us 5 touchdowns and a field goal. For them, that's 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Arkansas State scored 42 last week against Southeast Missouri State. And we gave up 7 points to Alabama A&M. So I think that Arkansas State's going to be able to score the football. I do. I think this is going to be a game. Second half, don't be surprised if it's like, I mean, looking at my own prediction, probably 21-10 at half. Like, don't be surprised if it's 24-10. Like, it's a game still. Like, it doesn't feel that way, maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of score early. Maybe it's a field goal, maybe it's a touchdown, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have 10 at least going into the half. They are a good offense. Like, if anywhere they're going to succeed, it's offensively. But I think we can score a lot of points. So they gave up 24 to Southeast Missouri State last week. Honestly, Southeast Missouri State threw the ball really well. I think they had 250 plus passing yards at least. So their quarterback played well. That gives me very good hope that our quarterback, who is significantly better than theirs, is going to play well. But I do think we will take over in the second half. I don't necessarily think we'll see KJ Jackson. That would be awesome if we did. That may have been his one and only reps. Hopefully we're not getting beat so bad in one of these games that he gets to play. But hopefully we're winning so big that he does. But I do think that we can really show it up in the second half and score even more points. I don't remember what the breakdown was in this A&M game. I think we probably scored more in the first half than we did in the second, but I'd be curious to see in that. I'll check in just a second. But We scored 31 in the first and 21 in the second. So I think it'll be flip flop. We'll probably score more in the second half in this game and really just finish it out. But don't be surprised if it's 21-10. Everyone's like, ah, man, defense sucks. Offense that last week was a fluke. No, it will be okay. I do think we ultimately win this game 38-17. The spread, I believe, right now is like 23 and a half, 24. I think it's going to teeter around there. Obviously, I was winning by 21. Um, Alabama A&M covered last week for whatever it's worth. I think it was 47 and a half. We won by 45. I think the over under right now is 62-ish in this game. You total these up, it's 55. I think our defense really comes out to play, and it's hard to take anything away from an interview, but watching Xavier Story and Campbell talk, I think they were really disappointed in that first drive. And like I understand, it's just player speak in the same way coaches do the same thing. But I really do value what they say because I think that you could the offense didn't really have to talk about much. The offense played really well. And watching their interview, it was Green, it was Brown, and it was Omega Blake. It was interesting to hear it, but it was all positive. And the defense, it wasn't. And I honestly think that you could, as a player, be like, we only gave up 7 points. Like 7 points is not that big of a deal. But for them to really take it to heart, and Pittman did the same thing, and be like, nah, we shouldn't have even given up 7. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I hope that ultimately ends up with something. But if we give up 17, like you shouldn't be that disappointed, in my opinion. I hope we give up less. But Jalen Raynor's a good quarterback. They have good receivers. Corey Rucker's legit, like 1,000-yard receiver caliber player. I mean, he did it last year. So I think if we can limit them to 17, maybe we can even score more than 38. I mean, for them to give up 24 to SEMO, I think we could do that. But I'm going to be a little bit realistic in my opinion and say that we score 38. So ultimately, I've got 38-17 as the final. So appreciate y'all joining us today. Just a little plug for the Voice of College Football. We've got a merch shop. If you go to VOCFB, right down there, you can kind of see it on the ticker, the VOCFB. If you just go to vocfb.com/shop, it'll direct you to our shop. The full URL, if you care, is vocfb-shop.fourthwall.com/collections/VOCFB. You can swap out that VOCFB at the end for pretty much any team. If you go to vocfb.com/shop, that's the easiest way to find us. You'll see there's so many teams. There's a team drop down. Obviously, there's Arkansas included. I wouldn't be plugging it if it wasn't. So feel free to go over there, vocfb.com/shop, SHOP. Click the drop down, click teams, and click Arkansas, and you can find merch there. Ultimately, too, please like, share, subscribe at Arkansas at the Voice of College Football. We did it a little bit early, but usually we're going to have live shows each week on Monday at around 5:30. I did it 5:15 today, not much different. But our next show is going to be following the Arkansas State game. I plugged it on this last week that we were going to be doing a live show after the Alabama A&M game. Things fell through, and ultimately we weren't able to do that. But we'll have one this week against Arkansas State. It's a little bit more of an important game, hopefully. We'll have played well, but further details will be posted on YouTube, so just stay tuned for that. Just keep your eye up for it. On that note, though, we're going to see you this Saturday. Post-game reaction, like I said, and hopefully, I said it last week, a 1-0 Razorback team. Now this week, hopefully a 2-0 Arkansas Razorback team. God bless, and go Hogs.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click Join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.